Political and industry leaders in countries hit by President Trump's 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium are weighing up a response, warning the levy hike will cause mass disruption and could lead to thousands of job cuts. The doubling of the tariffs from 25 to 50%, which came into force this time yesterday, which is an increase which doesn't apply to the UK. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney labelled the move illegal, while the country's biggest labour union is calling for the government to retaliate. The EU's Trade Commissioner said the tariffs are regrettable. Well, let's talk to William Lee, Chief Economist, Executive Director at the Milken Institute, a US-based economic think tank. Good morning to you, or good evening, as it were, in your case.
Hi, Sally. Thanks for having me on.
In your opinion, William, how damaging or not, as the case may be, will these tariffs be?
Well, I'll remind everybody that the U.S. is a relatively closed economy. Imports are only about 14% of GDP. And today, the Congressional Budget Office just released a very interesting study of what it estimates the impact of tariffs to be. They said that as far as GDP is concerned, the overall output of the United States, over the next 10 years, it'll be reduced by about half a percentage point, 0.6 percentage point. That means that every year, GDP growth might be held back by 0.06%. In other words, less than a tenth of a percentage point of growth is shaved off. And that's because most of the impact is going to come through exports that are cut back by the retaliatory tariffs. As far as inflation is concerned, again, the CBO did a great job in estimating where the impact might be on American citizens. They said that most of the inflation that comes from tariffs will likely come on consumer durables, washing machines, refrigerators, and dishwashers. Well, most of the lower income population rent, which means that the purchase of new washing machines and durable goods falls on the wealthier people in the country. So again, the distributional impact isn't so bad, and the estimate for inflation is also about half a percentage point over the next 2 years on average. So not so bad in terms of its impact on the United States. Okay. But on trade, it'll have severe impact.
Yeah, I mean, because I was going to say, I looked at that congressional report as well, showing their projection on impact, but then they were making those calculations prior to this increase in tariffs on steel and aluminium. And also there's the whole issue of whether some of his tariffs that he has introduced are legally okay or not going forward. And that's going to be assessed in the courts. So it's difficult, isn't it? And that's part of the problem for businesses. And for businesses that do rely heavily on metals, imported metals, they will be hugely impacted, won't they?
Well, one fortunate thing about the United States is that manufacturing and the use of these heavy metals and expensive imports is, again, a relatively small share of output. Most of the U.S. economy is a service-based economy. And I think you're right that business planning has been interrupted because of huge amount of policy uncertainty that's there. But the policy uncertainty is not so much over tariffs, but over the rest of the Trump agenda of smaller government, lower taxes, and fewer regulations. That's what businesses are saying, that we don't know where the promises from the Trump campaign are going to be reality or not. And the lower regulation and lower taxes and smaller government are the basis of the joy that the stock market had on the election of President Trump. So I think tariffs, as I said, is a smaller part of the policy uncertainty package.
Okay. William Lee, good to get your take on things. Thank you very much indeed. And just to say, we'll have more on that in business. Just to say that we had numbers out of the US yesterday that showed the services sector has contracted. So there's a lot to discuss. We'll unpack it further in 10 minutes. Let's bring you some other news now. Students